Pastor Edward Fairley. Edward Fairley lived in northern New Jersey, and in 1996, he founded the Koinonia and Christian Ministries, and would later become his senior pastor. In 2001, Reverend Edward Fairley began a romantic relationship with Reverend Simone Shields Oliver. In 2005, Fairley got married to another woman, but the affair continued until 2008 when Reverend Simone began seeing another man who would later go on to propose. Despite being married, the engagement upset Fairley, and he began threatening and harassing Reverend Simone. He threatened to show the photos and videos that he had secretly taken of her to her fiancé if she didn't continue to have sex with him each month. Reverend Simone, who was a teacher at this time, quit her job, left the church, and cut off all communication with Fairley and filed a harassment charge against him. She even moved out of her place and in with her fiancé and changed her wedding date. And on Tuesday, March 1st, 2011, Edward Fairley tracked Reverend Simone's phone using a phone tracker and tracked her to her hairdresser's house. And it was just a few days before Reverend Simone's wedding when Fairley arrived to the hairdresser's house and pulled out a knife and began stabbing Reverend Simone a total of 28 times about the head, face, chest, and torso. Fairley was soon arrested after police arriving to the scene saw him staggering down the street, covered in blood, carrying a hunting knife. The trial began Friday, February 22nd, 2013, and lasted a week and a half, where Edward Fairley represented himself in court. During the trial, Fairley had to cross-examine Reverend Simone, where she explained how she had been trying to end the adulterous affair for the past 5 years, but Fairley had made it difficult. He would constantly call and threaten her. Fairley then asked Reverend Simone to describe the day of her attack. She replied, "He looked at me and said, 'You have to die,' and pulled out a hunting knife." During the trial, Fairley confessed in third person to the attack. The hairdresser, a friend of both of the reverends, also took the stand where she stated she had no idea about the affair, so when Fairley called and stated he was coming over, she didn't think to warn Reverend Simone that he was coming over. It was also brought out in court that in 1983, Fairley was also indicted on charges of breaking into his first estranged wife's apartment, where she was with their son, and he stabbed her a total of 9 times. He only stopped when a neighbor, hearing the screams, interrupted and had a gun. The jury deliberated for approximately 4 hours and came back with a guilty verdict for attempted murder, stalking, terroristic threats, and possession of a weapon for unlawful purposes. And on Friday, March 22nd, 2013, Fairley, now 60, was sentenced to 21 years in prison. He will be released on February 28, 2028. Olga Diaz. 35-year-old Olga Diaz lived in Long Branch, New Jersey. And on Friday, June 16, 2017, she was arrested for a heinous act that her and her accomplice, 34-year-old Jamie Mauricio Leon, committed earlier that day. It all began just a day prior, on Thursday, June 15, 2017, when Olga was watching a 4-year-old girl. While the little girl was nude, Olga used her phone and took photos of her. On June 16, 2017, Olga went a step further and recorded herself inappropriately touching the little girl. She then sent the photos from the previous day and the videos that she had just made to Jamie. Once receiving the photos, Jamie then traveled to Long Branch, New Jersey, to meet with Olga at her apartment, and they both inappropriately touched the little girl, even recording the assault. It was then a passerby walking by saw the two and what they were doing. The man immediately went to the Long Branch police headquarters and stated that he had witnessed two individuals, a man and a woman, committing explicit acts on a child and saw it through the window of an apartment unit. After hearing this, police head to the apartment complex and arrest Olga as she was pulling out of the parking space. Jamie was arrested a week later on Friday, June 23, 2017, in Fort Lee at a job site with the help of U.S. Marshals. Upon questioning, Olga would admit to investigators that she and Jamie had planned the assault on the little girl via text message. She also admitted to taking pictures of the little girl nude in the video she made assaulting the little girl hours before they assaulted her together. After recovering the phones of the two suspects, police gained access to the phone content and found the photos and videos of the little girl. But in the video of the pair assaulting the child, they noticed that she wasn't moving. Investigators then went back and questioned Olga a second time, where she admits to giving the little girl sleeping pills before the assault began. And with Olga's confession and the evidence in their phones, on Friday, August 2nd, 2019, a judge sentenced 34-year-old Jamie Mauricio Leon to 25 years in prison for the possession of child pornography and the assault. The next year, in April of 2021, Olga Diaz pled guilty, and later that year, on Friday, October 15, 2021, she was sentenced to 35 years in prison, 25 years for the assault, plus 10 years for the child endangerment. Olga has to complete 33 and a half years of her sentence before becoming eligible for parole in 2054. At this time, she'll be 69 years old, and if released, she'll be required to register as a sex offender and be placed on parole supervision for the rest of her life under Jessica's law. Jada McClain and Quamir Muhammad. Jada McClain and Quamir Muhammad were both students at Neptune Township Regional High School in New Jersey. And in July of 2018, Jada and Quamir discovered they were expecting a baby. Worried that her parents would find out about the pregnancy if she attempted to get an abortion, Jada tried on her own to terminate the pregnancy by drinking alcohol, smoking marijuana, and taking pills. Despite her efforts, in the early morning hours of Monday, March 29, 2019, while at home, Jada gave birth to a healthy baby boy while sitting on the toilet. But the infant wouldn't live to even become 1 hour old. But the death of the child would not be discovered until April 4th, 2019, when authorities received a tip from a friend of Jada that stated the high school student had recently given birth and that the newborn had died. The Neptune Township Police Department began an investigation and learned from a tearful Jada McClain herself, who confessed after being brought in for questioning, that she was trying to hide the pregnancy from her parents. She stated that she had given birth on the morning of March 29, 2019, and that after the baby boy was born, she pressed on his chest with her hands until he stopped breathing. Right afterwards, Jada says she texted the father of the newborn, Quamir, and that she told him she had given birth and the baby wasn't moving. She then texted him, "I did it, baby," and that he'd gotten a message once he woke up. Jada said once she knew Quamir was awake, she got into her car with the deceased infant wrapped in towels, placed him in the back seat, and drove to Quamir's home and picked him up. She stated that they drove to the Washington Village Apartments, where Quamir threw the infant into the dumpster, which was confirmed after police obtained the surveillance video from the apartment complex. Investigators learned soon after that the contents of the dumpster carrying the infant's body had been transported, compacted, and buried, so the infant's body was never recovered. Qamar Muhammad, now 21, had his hearing on Friday, April 12, 2019, for a detention hearing. Then Jada McClain, now 20, had her hearing on Wednesday, April 17, 2019. The couple wouldn't be sentenced until Thursday, April 22, 2021. Jada McClain was sentenced to 10 years in prison for aggravated manslaughter, and Qamar Muhammad was sentenced to 5 years for the desecration of human remains. Jada McClain is scheduled for release on October 3, 2027, and Qamar Muhammad will be eligible for parole on June 29, 2022. If denied, he will be released from prison on December 19, 2024.